Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Inge Firdiani and I would like to present about my film analysis entitled Kartini 2017 Women in the Confines of the Patriarchal Javanese Tradition. And let's start with the abstract. This study aims to describe the impact of the patriarchal Javanese tradition on women and women in the patriarchal Javanese tradition and Kartini's resistance to patriarchal culture. This research used a qualitative descriptive method with the data source of the Kartini film with observation. The results of this study are a collection of descriptions of patriarchal Javanese culture, representation of women in the confines of Javanese patriarchal culture, and Kartini's resistance to patriarchal culture in the Kartini film. And the second is the introduction. Mass media is a channel which represents culture and as an image, social and materiality to show and maintain social identity, according to McQuarrie, 2010. Film is one of the mass media that serves for entertainment, educative, persuasive, and informative. The educational function can be achieved if national films produce films that contain objective history or documentaries, as well as films that are appointed from daily life in balance. We can also know or introduce the history of a nation from time to time. One of the track recorders the most effective is the national film. Kartini film, directed by Hanung Bramantio in 2017, is one of the representations of the Indonesian of the history of Indonesian nation about the struggle of Kartini, main character of the film, for the emancipation of women. This film won 13 Citra trophies, and this film starred by Dian Sastrowardoyo as Kartini, Reza Radian as Kartono, Adinia Wirasti as Sulastri, and Ayushita as Kardinah, and Acha Septriasa as Rukmini, and others. Kartini movie tells about the struggle of the nation, of the Indonesian nation in the 18th centuries in the land of Java and under the rule of Dutch colonies. Raden Ajeng Kartini was born on the 21st of April 1879. She is a child from Sosroningrat and Ngasirah. Kartini has two older brothers, namely Raden Ayu Cokro Adisosro and Raden Mas Sosro Kartono, and his five younger siblings, namely Raden Ajeng Kardinah, Raden Ajeng Kartinah, Raden Ajeng Sosro Mulyono, Raden Ajeng Sumantri, and Raden Mas Sosro Rawito. The Kartini film tells that in Javanese culture, a noble woman who married a regent of noble descent was called Raden Ayu. The daughter of the regent, whether from a noble wife or not, when she enters puberty, she must be a Raden Ayu. When a girl becomes Raden Ayu, she has to undergo exile by being locked up at home since her first menstruation to wait for a man of noble descent came to propose and make her his first wife or second, even third. In the 19th century, women were not allowed to undergo higher education, including even for the nobility such as Kartini, whose father was a regent. Javanese woman cannot be free, her position not equal to men. In that era, it can be categorized as a marginalized group. A noble woman leaving the house is tantamount to breaking customary rules. Seeking knowledge is considered taboo by society. Women are allowed to earn a living but often forced to marry a married woman, a married man. The figure of Kartini in the Kartini film is a woman who is a figure of emancipation and has revolutionary soul. Kartini tried to change the tradition, fight for women's rights to get equality, a condition that is not easily lived by the character of Kartini. In Javanese tradition, as the mother of the royal children and wife of the kings of South Central Java, not only tasked by not only tasked with ensuring the continuity of the kingdom, but is also required to preserve values, Javanese cultural and spiritual values, based on palace customs and the education of the king's children. The next is the research questions, and there are three questions. The first is, what is the impact of the patriarchal Javanese tradition on women in the Kartini film? And how does the film represent women in the patriarchal Javanese tradition? And how did Kartini's character react to confines of patriarchal Javanese culture? And the next is preview study. In the journal article which entitled Feminisme dalam Film Kartini by Henny Mafurotin in the form of Kartini's contribution in fighting feminism has not been described in detail. And the theories. Mass media is a channel that represents the culture and as an image of social and material reality to show and maintain social identity. Patriarchal culture is a culture that does not accommodate equality and balance, so the existence of women becomes unimportant. And the next is research method. The research method used in this research is descriptive qualitative and uses feminist criticism theory to explain Japanese patriarchal culture in Kartini film. Source of data from this research include the film Kartini as the object of research and textbooks and journals that are relevant to this research. This study uses the technique of viewing or watching, recording, observing, and analyzing data based on the content of the film in the data collection procedure. And the key instrument in this research is the researcher. And let's move to the analysis. What is the impact of the patriarchal Javanese tradition on women in the Kartini film? Patriarchal culture is still considered normal in a patriarchal society, but this gender inequality is not very beneficial for women, since the patriarchy system that dominates the culture of society causes gender inequality and inequality that affects various aspects of human activities. Men have a role as the main control in society, while women have title influence or can be said to have no rights in general areas in society, both economically, socially, politically, and even psychology, including in the institution of marriage. Patriarchal culture in the Kartini film is depicted through the culture of polygamy, the silence of Javanese women, and the discrimination and subordination experienced by Javanese women. Javanese culture in the 19th century thick with patriarchal ideology. From the noble class to the lower class, the men in the same class have higher scores than girls. Women are only seen as who dwell in the domestic sector, such as kitchens, wells, and mistresses. Education is a luxury that is not can be enjoyed by Japanese women in that time, including Kartini. Emphasized that national history also revealed a fact where the women are not allowed to take education, except for women, they come from the priai or aristocratic class. In accordance with the prevailing customs in Japanese culture, Kartini was secluded when she had her first menstruation until the nobleman came to marry her. Seclusion or the bride is the pre-wedding tradition is usually done before the wedding day. The bride and groom don't may leave the house or meet her future husband until the consent is held granted. The same thing happened to Kartini in undergoing a period of seclusion. Kartini prohibited from leaving the house, and doing seclusion means a woman in Java is prepared to become Raden Ajeng as a descendant of a noble regent. Kartini had to pass on her aristocratic blood. It's not only Kartini who has to in seclusion. His two younger siblings, Rukmini and Karina, were imposed seclusion. And the next is, how did Kartini's character react to the confines of patriarchal Javanese culture? Kartini's rejection of the practice of patriarchy grew since she was a child. She refuses to call her biological mother Yungasirah as Yu. Yu is a nickname for female servants in Indonesian Daci because her mother came from the lower class people. She also refused to be called Raden Ajeng. Raden Ajeng is a term for a noble woman. Khalil Kartini even rebelled when she was about to be transferred to front house. Front house is a term for a place to live for noble families, and Siwon lived with uh, her mother Yungasirah in the back house. Back house is the term where the Daci servant live. She also refused to go through the procession to become a Raden Ajeng. Yungasirah must remain subservient to Javanese culture and serve her children who have noble titles, even though she is Kartini's biological mother. The lower class status made Yungasirah equal to the other Daci servants. When she grew up, Kartini's rebellion against patriarchal culture was seen through her desire to break away from the tradition of seclusion. Since her first menstruation, Kartini had to undergo a period of seclusion and was forbidden to leave the house until the arrival of noblemen to marry her. Kartini's form of rejection of patriarchal culture can also be seen from her efforts to provide Dutch language learning to women from the lower classes. She did this as an effort to eradicate the ignorance of Javanese women. Kartini's efforts are based on thoughts that education is the only way to eliminate gender inequality. Furthermore, Kartini was also active in producing the article which published in the Anthropology and Language Journal published by the Royal Dutch Research Institute to voice her problems or Japanese woman at that time. To cover up her true identity, Kartini used the pen name Daun Semanggi. Many people critics Kartini's action, but she didn't give up. Kartini secretly wrote a letter to Mrs. Ovingsur to help her escape to seclusion. As a result, Kartini's writings were exhibited in Den Haag to commemorate the appointment of Queen Wilhelmina. Kartini and her two younger siblings, Rukmini and Kartina, were also given the opportunity to exhibit Jepara carving products in Den Haag. After the art exhibition, orders for Jepara carvings increased, which is caused the economy of Jepara to improve. Kartini also applied for a scholarship to the Dutch government so that she could continue her education and help women in Java to obtain their rights. But before the scholarship application was approved by the Dutch government, Kartini was proposed by the Rembang regent, so that Kartini was forced to cancel her plans to continue her education. Although she already married by the regent of Rembang, Kartini still continues her struggle against patriarchal culture with the support of her husband. Kartini established a women's school in Rembang. Kartini was also active in expressing her thoughts on education and women's emancipation through her articles and letters, which were published under the title Habis Gelap Terbitlah Terang. And the next is the conclusion. The first is one of the patriarchal cultures that discriminate against women is depicted in the prohibition against women's education in the Kartini film. And women are only seen as those who dwell in the domestic sectors such as kitchens, wells, and mistresses. They are also secluded since their first menstruation. And next, Kartini's character in the film Kartini tried to rebel against Javanese patriarchal culture. One of her efforts can be seen when she established a women's school. Kartini's character plays an important role in the education of Indonesian women. Kartini figures have the idea that education is a way that can break down the walls of Javanese patriarchy. And references I used for my research. And that's all from me. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.